My name is Alia Azariah. I am the Director of Aftercare for Safe House Project. This is my, I think, fourth year. We're coming to the end of our fourth year of webinar series as an organization, and we bring these to you every month, usually the last Friday at this time. And our topics for the webinar are everything from therapeutic clinical care to digital safety to healthcare services and everywhere in between, just any topic that's related to serving survivors. I really like to consider this webinar series as being by the field for the field because I look at every survey that y'all fill out throughout the year to figure out what are you looking for information on, and then I go out and I find who are the people that are best able to speak to that topic. So by no means are our webinar series meant to be like full trainings. Any topic that we bring to you could probably be like a 3-day conference on the topic. And so I'm just hoping to bring together some people to point you in the right direction, to start a conversation that maybe as a community-based organization you feel like you're having in a silo, and to open up the network of people that are having these conversations so that you can connect to each other and we can hear from each other in a way that's really authentic and brings these conversations forward. We have 2 more webinars this year, and I'm excited to get started and discuss kind of why we're here today. So to orient our topic for the day, this webinar is From the Top Down, Trusted Leadership in Anti-Trafficking, because in this field, we spend a lot of time talking about things like therapeutic care and service models and survivor outcomes. And those things are extremely critical, which is why we do webinars on them. We have conferences around them. But what often gets overlooked in our field is leadership itself. But leadership is usually what's setting the tone for whether the services that we offer are effective, whether they're sustainable, and whether they're truly survivor-centered. Because the reality is that there's a huge lack of formalized leadership development in the anti-trafficking field, because most of us adapt into work because we really care about survivors, not because somebody trained us in how to lead teams or shape culture or prevent burnout. But leadership is what the thread is that holds everything together within our organizations. And when leadership is broken, even the best therapeutic programming models can fail. But when leadership is trusted, or it's humble and it's grounded in service, it creates teams that thrive, that can serve survivors at the highest possible levels of care. And thriving teams are what makes healing, gives survivors the best environment to accelerate their healing. And so that's why we're having this conversation today. That's why we're talking about this instead of clinical models or, digital safety or some of the other things that we spend a lot of time talking about, because we want to broaden the lens to stop thinking only about the work itself and the practical application of the work itself, and start asking, how do we lead in a way that makes high quality and sustainable care possible, so we can continue serving the survivors that come to us seeking services in the best possible way. And so we're going to explore today what it looks like to maybe flip the leadership triangle to prevent burnout and avoid founder syndrome, and build organizations where trust and collaboration aren't just values on paper, but they're lived realities and things that show up in the work that we do with survivors every day. Because survivors don't just need programs, we also need strong and trusted teams behind the programs so that we can rely on the services that we are opting in for. And strong teams are built by leaders who are willing to grow, who are willing to share power, and who are willing to lead differently. So I'm going to kind of open it up with just a general question after I get started, after I introduce our incredible panelists. So I'm going to start with introducing Dr. Kelsey Franco. With a fierce passion for fighting for freedom, Dr. Franco has served as the executive director of House of Cherith since its launch in 2014. She brings a wealth of qualifications to the positions, including a doctorate in business administration and a specialization in nonprofit management, mental health first aid, vicarious trauma certification, and suicide intervention. She's also the daughter of Bruce and Rhonda Deal. So she was essentially raised in the ministry and has a sincere heart for helping others and for justice and fighting trafficking and helping survivors move from a victim's mindset to a victor's mentality is one of Kelsey's greatest passions. So we thank you, Kelsey, for being here as a panelist as well. And then our second panelist is Vanessa Russell. Vanessa has developed children in dance. She teaches hundreds, ages 3 to 25, with lyrical, flags, hip hop, and mind since 2000. But in 2010, one of her 14-year-old dance students was involved in human trafficking. And although she was eventually located and is now in her journey of restoration, Vanessa encountered many others who, like her students, were experiencing this modern slavery. And so her response was to launch Love Never Fails, which is a nonprofit dedicated to restoring, educating, and protecting those involved or at risk of becoming involved in domestic human trafficking. Love Never Fails has educated thousands of children and community members on trafficking. They've opened 8 homes that provide long-term safe housing and restorative services for over 400 women, men, youth, and children impacted by human trafficking, and launched an IT academy as well, connecting underserved community members with financially stable careers. And so we are grateful for your participation as well, Vanessa. And our third panelist is Rosie Harris, and Rosie is deeply passionate about mental health and trauma recovery. She believes one of life's greatest privileges is to walk alongside women as they discover their resilience, reclaim their stories, and move toward healing and wholeness. So with more than 13 years of experience in the mental health field, Rosie is a counselor by training and is currently pursuing her doctoral degree in traumatology. And she currently serves as the executive director of Refuge for Women Las Vegas, where she has the honor of walking with women who've experienced sexual exploitation and trafficking. She thrives in crisis moments. She's also uniquely gifted at creating clarity and calm amidst chaos. And she carries a deep conviction that the church should be a safe and supportive place for mental health healing and care. So we're so grateful to have you guys here as well. And my first question for the panel is, what does trusted leadership mean in action for you all? Go for it, Kelsey. I saw you unmute.
I was trying to get ready. It's a little awkward to talk about leadership when my whole team is on the webinar. I hope they would agree with at least a couple of my points, but we shall see later. But for me, trusted leadership is not just something that's talked about, but it's something that's felt among your team members. It's about consistency and transparency. It's about accountability and fairness, but it's mainly about, for me, it's mainly about presence. Does your team feel you are present with them as they are struggling or as they are succeeding? Do they feel you are available and accessible? It's about consistent behaviors that show them your integrity, that show them your competence, and that show them that you care. And so mine would just be something that is felt by staff and not just talked about by the leadership team.
I love that your team is here to watch you talk about leadership and they are cheering you on in the
They're
chat.
yelling down the hallway. They have like a watch party with popcorn. It's weird.
I love that. Come on, support.
Yeah.
I would just say, to add to that, I think trusted leadership is the difference between, or it's making congruent what we say and what we do. I'm not someone who thinks that titles make people trustworthy. I think that there has to be established credibility and rapport. And so just because someone is an executive director or a director of a home, that doesn't mean we can trust you by nature. And so I think, much like Kelsey said, I think it's what people feel when they're around you. Are you credible? Is there congruence between what you say you believe and how you handle your team and the survivors in your care?
Absolutely.
And I would like to say ditto to all of that, as well as I just think part of trusted leadership is a level of humility, because I have been doing this for 14 years, and I can tell you I have evolved as a leader over time. And it's being willing to say, I'm sorry, I got that wrong, use mistakes as a learning opportunity, and to be able to shift and be malleable and humble. And so, kind of in addition to those other pieces of being felt, being present with your team, caring for your team, meeting them where they are, but it's that willingness to be humble and to say, I'm sorry when we get it wrong. So.
Absolutely. Thank you all for that. I'm lucky enough to be a part of a team that I feel that I really trust my leadership and know that like my own growth as an employee and as a part of the team has has really been dependent on the fact that I trust my leaders. So when we do have hard conversations, or I know the motives from which it's coming from, and I know that it's coming from people that are working just as hard as I'm working. And I think that's something that I've been able to be a part of a couple of teams in my life and in this field. And I've had different experiences also where I've watched like the direct care staff who are the ones that are doing the boots on the ground work with the survivors every single day, pouring hours and hours and just emotional hours into this work with leadership who are, leadership who I'm trying to be gracious in the way that I say it, but leadership who maybe doesn't work as many hours, or this is a second career for them, or act more as like a founder with decision-making power than like an executive director who's involved in kind of shaping the work. And I've watched just the exhaustion that those kind of teams have and the distance it creates between the people with the decision-making power and the people who really know the survivors and are pouring out that intentional work every day. So would love to hear from you guys, this idea that frontline staff often in many organizations are carrying the heaviest weight. What does it look like to flip that so that leaders are taking on at least an equal amount of work and weight from the people that are maybe speaking to survivors most often?
Yeah, I think it's really important that as a leader, executive director, founder, CEO, whatever your leadership role is, well, for us, I'll give you an example. We do street outreach. You will find me out on a blade or a track doing street outreach, handing out food, handing out supplies to people that are actively being sold. It keeps my heart sharp, it keeps my mind, it keeps me engaged with the work. And I need that. There's if the day that I am too busy, I'm in too many meetings, I'm dealing with too many proposals and so on, that I can't spend time with survivors alongside staff, hearing what is really going on, because things are changing. The landscape is evolving, so much. When I first started 14 years ago, we didn't have the kinds of things like, deep fakes and AI and the technology pieces. You have to stay in the mud, so to speak, with folks, or get in there sometimes and empathize with their experience. And so I just believe strongly setting time aside for that is really important, and being accessible to all staff. Open door policy. People can email you, text you if there are emergencies and they can't get a hold of somebody. You being available. And that's a hard thing to do because you do have to have some boundaries, but it's that balance, I think, that makes people feel like you're there for them and you're part of the day to day.
Yeah, I don't know if Kelsey was about to jump in. I think exactly what Vanessa said. I am someone who tries to lead by the mantra that I'll never ask my team to do something that I'm not willing to do. So if I'm asking you to get up at 4 a.m. and do a transport, I better be willing to do a transport at 4 a.m. If I'm taking you away from your family, then surely like I can pull away from mine. And so I think some of it means not sitting at the top comfortably where our staff are crushed under the weight of the load, but it means moving to the bottom strategically to help offset that. Now, that's not to say that it won't be difficult or that there's not nuance and tension, but I think we create workspaces where morale thrives when our team see us live out the same things that are expected of them. And so I think in a small way, I won't ask you to do something that I too won't honor. And if I'm asking you to do it, you better believe that I'll link arms with you and share that load. And so I think there's this mindfulness that comes from our frontline staff are not they're not less important. They're not any of those things. And so if I'm calling you to it, I need to be able to show up and then do the same thing I'm asking of you.
Yeah, that's great. Just to hammer it home really quickly, a couple of practical things that I like to try to do is to be the one that makes the hard decisions, ones that are the emotionally taxing decisions. If a resident has to ultimately get dismissed, I don't want somebody to always have to be the bad guy. I want to be able to alleviate some of that where and when I can. I know everybody's role is different. I am a founder and an executive director, so I see it through a little bit of a different lens. So I've been involved for 12 years, served in every single role you could serve in. My cell phone was the intake line, so I've done those roles. And I think in doing that, it's taught me what to look for signs of burnout for my team, for signs of frustration for the team. When I check in with the houses, it shows, where areas of oversight need to be increased or decreased. What another bullet point I had was to just create emotional safety, to allow your team those spaces to process and vent. We hear tough stories all day, every day. Your intake coordinators are reviewing applications that would make horror films blush. So if we're not checking in on them, creating a safe emotional environment for them to process, to fix their mascara when they cry, to step outside and grab some fresh air, then we're doing them a disservice. And then lastly, it would be carrying the vision and the direction for the organization. As the executive director and founder, that is my responsibility. And if I'm putting that on someone else, that's not setting anyone up for success. So while I cast the vision and I set the course for our organization, it is ultimately my job and responsibility to not only employ folks, but to employ, empower, and equip my team to carry out the vision. And if they are not being successful, I my team may argue otherwise. I try to look inward first and say, how can I better equip them? How can I better empower them? So, in a nutshell, making those hard decisions, creating emotional safety, and then carrying out the vision and allowing them to implement it.
That's awesome. Thank you all. I think that yeah, it's so great to hear consistency, right? Because it's like there is, as much as there is a leadership formula. There are actual tangible things that you can do and put into practice to do this well, even if you've never been in this type of position before or it's new to you. And I think I've my own experience with leadership is that I'm not an executive director, but I'm in leadership within our organization. And my role is not survivor facing. I don't have my own role is not that I get to work with survivors on a regular basis, but I have to have survivors that I'm working with in order to do my job well. And so I am still mentoring women or girls. I am still going into juvenile facilities and sitting and having a conversation. To know the people that are benefiting from the services that we provide, and it is such a reminder of how difficult the work that we ask other people in our direct service roles to do, because I know I can get caught up in the theory and the practice and all of the other things and forget that how if I wasn't in relationship with other survivors who are experiencing crisis, how difficult it is to just sometimes show up for them and be regulated and show up with what they need for that day. And so I love that. And I feel like our own leadership strategy is what you guys are talking about and it's part of why I stay on the team. If I didn't have this leadership, I probably wouldn't stay. But to know that if somebody on our survivor support team is sick, our CEO will do that work if she can. That's an important piece of all of this. And so would love to hear from you all. In your opinion, how do leadership decisions directly impact the quality of the survivor services you're able to provide?
Okay, I will go first. I would like to say that, when leadership is making the decisions, it's trickled down through your staff. So if your frontline staff are carrying the heaviest weight, then as a leader, you're looking like more of a manager instead of a leader. But when leaders take on that role, your staff are free to thrive. And when your staff are free to thrive and succeed, then your residents and your clients are as well. So the more you empower your team to take ownership of their area of responsibility, the more the survivors are starting to witness that and then are able to implement that in their own lives. So a lot of our survivors, y'all know this, they haven't had control. They haven't been able to use their own voice, their own choice. So in empowering my staff to do that and not micromanaging them, then the staff then translate that to the residents. And it's starting to cultivate this atmosphere of, it is up to me what happens today. It is up to me, my responsibilities for the day. So leadership the choices don't stay in the office. They shouldn't. They should trickle down. They should be seen in your organization. They should be seen from the most recent team member to the one that's been here for 10 years, from the most recent survivor that came in to the one that's been here for 10 months. So you should be able to see it translating through all areas. But again, it's just like you have to carry the weight of that. And, that can be a difficult task. That's why you have to surround yourself by other organizations like Rosie and the team here. We have to pour into each other as well. But your choices can't stay in the office, and the choices we make show the quality of care that our survivors deserve. So is your leadership reflecting what you believe your survivors deserve is ultimately what I ask myself at the end of each day, at the end of each week. Did I serve in a way that honored this survivor and what she needed and deserved for that week? Did I show her value in the decisions that I made? Did I show her worth? Did I show her she's worth more than the price tag someone else has put on her? And that's ultimately what guides each of the decisions I make. And then, in a real life situation, what does that look like? It's staff support. It's defining your culture and implementing that in a positive way. It's drafting policies that support your survivors first. I am not a survivor, and I will never claim to have the same experience or to understand what that feels like. But if I allow them to inform my policies and my protocols, then it's a survivor-based program built by other survivors, and it's led by me, yes, but ultimately it's built through their experiences.
Thank you, Kelsey.
Welcome.
I mean, Kelsey killed that. and I think she's right. I think not only do our leadership decisions do they not stay in the office, I think we will be foolish to assume that they do. It will be foolish to assume that the decisions we are making are not impacting those that we serve. And so I think as leaders, it is our job to set the tone, to have the vision, to cast it in a way that our teams have the freedom to run the play. Because if I'm cutting staff support, then my residents feel that. If I am cutting clinical support, then my residents feel that. If there's a lack of funding and any of those things mean that we have to shift the model, it would be foolish to assume that that leadership decision does not directly impact those women we are serving. And so I think a great deal of it is being forward focused and having the eyes to see where are we going, what are some of our barriers, what are hiccups to providing quality care, and how can I lead in a way that helps me thwart that, so that we can still do what we said. Because if we're not living up to the mission and vision, then I think it begs the question, is this still successful, or does there need to be a reconfiguring of the model?
Yeah, and I'll just add that I think it's really important. This is going back to that cultural humility and professional humility, is like making sure that there are lots of feedback loops in our processes and making sure that we make decisions in a collaborative way. When we are doing a discharge, I'll just give you an example. There used to be a model where the manager would make the decision to do the discharge. And sometimes there would be, some things that people didn't see or hadn't considered. In the recent years, we established a council where we have a clinical member on the council. We have a services manager, the one who's managing all of our schedules. We have a program manager. We have a reunification coach. We have different disciplines in this council, and we bring forward the idea to discharge a client, and we look at it and say, did they really get enough mental health services in order to have the level of stabilization that they needed so that they wouldn't have the behavior that is causing the discharge, right? So looking at things from many different disciplines, slowing down the process, giving opportunities for everybody to chime in, creates a culture of everybody's valuable, everybody's important, everyone's empowered. And so we have found the more we can do that, the better outcomes we have. The one thing, though, I will say is there is sometimes a need for command and control, like in an emergency. And we've had to learn how to flip the switch where, okay, this is that moment. Somebody dangerous has shown up to our neighborhood, or something really, out of order is happening. That's where we have those instances. And so being dynamic in that way is really important. And the last thing I'll say is we also have implemented something called Manager 360 surveys. And so we give not only the staff, but also the clients the opportunity to review us, to provide us feedback. And again, that is so, and I'm included in that. And that is so that we have feedback loops that keep us all in check and humble and orient us towards the needs of those that we serve. And so it keeps us all in alignment. And yeah, excited.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for that. And it was a great lead in for my next question, which is one of my favorite questions, which is about leading across differences, right? If we're doing a good job, we have teams that are coming from different lived experience backgrounds. I know many of you have like survivors on your team coming from different cultural and racial backgrounds, different backgrounds in education, in professional pasts, and would love to hear from you guys how you lead in a way that embraces those differences of background, philosophy, and lived experience. Go for it, Rosie. I saw you on mute.
Yeah, I think I try to lean into curiosity. I think when we have a posture that is curious, we can say, what can I learn from this person? And what vantage point do they have that I haven't otherwise considered? And so I try to lean into curiosity and not control, and see diversity of thought as a resource and not a liability. But I think a lot of that happens when leaders are confident in their positionings and what they bring to the table. They are confident that they are a value add. Therefore, I don't have to control the narrative. I don't have to mute your voice or stifle your voice to feel as if I am empowered. And so I think a lot of it is realizing that in our line of work, up to 60% of women who are trafficked fall into the Black, Indigenous, people of color population. And so if that is true, it would be foolish of me to not only have survivors on my staff, but also Black and brown women who can speak into the nuance and into the tension. And I need to lead in a way that says, I'm curious about how your vantage point helps us, how your vantage point gets us to a point that maybe I didn't even consider, and do that in a way that is not fearful of someone else bringing something to the table that I didn't. And so I think when we choose curiosity over control, then the entire organization thrives, and it leads in a way where I know that my team members are not merely bodies, but they're value adds. Because if I don't trust your voice, then why are you here? And so I think curiosity over control.
Absolutely.
And I'll just chime in and say, I love that, by the way, curiosity instead of control. That's like a whole t-shirt. We need that. So, but I wanted to share that we developed a curriculum called Empathetic Employer Empowerment Curriculum, E3. And it's all about helping people to see what their personal biases are, organizational biases, personal biases, and then learning how to ask deeper questions of other people to understand their points of view. And you don't have to agree, but empathetic listening or active listening helps you to kind of meet people in the middle and understand why they made a decision or why they see things a certain way. I find it remarkable. We have such a range of different ethnicities and genders and gender identities and experiences in our staff, right? And it's reflective of the people that we serve. And I feel really honored. Some of the people that are on our team are staunch Republicans, some are staunch Democrats, and somehow, y'all, we're all getting along, serving on one accord. It's a beautiful thing to watch. And I think it's because there is this commitment to hear each other, to respectfully disagree when we need to, and to honor each other's positions and experiences. And I just really value that. One message that our senior program manager just keeps honing is we choose the people over the program. And that for me is everything. Do we choose those that we work with, those that we serve over the program? Yes, so that's our commitment every day.
Thank you.
I love that. Y'all are making all kind of fun hashtags. I love it. The only things that I would really add in a quick manner is to just realize and understand that no one perspective has the entire picture. There's so many different pieces to the puzzle, and any perspective can enhance and enlighten that a bit. So to not only just tolerate other perspectives and other philosophies or backgrounds or races, but to value them and to show people that despite the differences, there is value in that, and that it can become a strength if maximized appropriately. It involves a leader that will invite other voices in, that for other people that don't look like me, that don't sound like me, that don't have the same education or upbringing as me, to bring those voices to the table. I am a Christian. I am a faith-based program. And so to invite people with outside religions into that conversation to invite people with, just the whole diverse scheme of everybody. Like, obviously, you can't have everybody in the world in one conversation to draft policies, but to have different cultures and perspectives represented and to show them value in that. And then to check my blind spots, to be willing to not only learn about new things, but to unlearn some things that we have been taught along the way as well. And then to admit if I've missed something. I am a very competitive, very spicy person. I'm a redhead, as y'all can see, so that makes me a little extra spicy. I don't like admitting when I'm wrong. I don't like being wrong, but especially when it comes to incorporating others' backgrounds and philosophies and lived experiences, there are times I've been wrong, and I need to be able to admit that first as a leader, and then we can grow together as we, make the changes in the organization together.
Yeah, thank you. I'm feeling emotional. It's so great. I think I so often have conversations with people that just don't have access to even just a resource like a webinar like this, and they feel like they're leading in a silo. And I'm excited for people to be able to have the information that you all are giving. And these three are by no means the only incredible leaders in this field, right? I feel like I'm lucky enough because of the work that we do to know so many incredible leaders, and so excited to just be able to bring everyone to the table at some point as well. So two of you are founders, one of you is not, and I want to be able to talk about leadership from both of those perspectives. So we're going to start with Kelsey and Vanessa. As founders, what in your perspective, what helps organizations avoid over-reliance on one person and build lasting impact and sustainable impact with the founder operating as the ED for such a long time for both of you?
Yeah. Thank you, Kelsey. So yeah, I have been really spending time. Well, first of all, I take a day of rest every week. It's usually today, actually, but I shifted it to Saturday. So it's usually Fridays. And I take that time to reflect on, where I believe I'm going and where each of my staff members are going and things that I see in them, gifts, abilities that I want to develop. And I really take moments to pause. This is not me, you guys. My background is in high tech. I was a senior global leader, with a $20 million quota in my previous life. And so I was intense. I was a type all the way, very much like Dr. Kelsey, just driven, competitive, all the things. So I've had to shift that way of being to be more reflective, to be more intentional, to slow down, to be careful about, I might see something in someone, they don't want to do it. It's not my decision, it's their life. And so as a founder, I have found that I am, even right now, I've already started planning what it's going to look like when I hand off the baton. So I have a 10-year timeline. I'm going on sabbatical next year. That'll be the first one in 15 years. I am preparing team members to take over every part of the business. I believe in them. I appreciate them. I value them. And I know that our organization is going to continue as long as I, invest and I reflect on, everything that we're doing and the longevity of the work, and that the work isn't tied to me. It's not about me. I am honored to have taken it this far, but I have to be willing to release it to capable hands and also make sure that survivors' voice are included, through, with, and by survivors is a huge value of mine. And so every step of the way, I am including survivor voice in making a lot of these decisions. So those are some of the ways that I'm, making sure that I don't get into that founder syndrome, which I have to say, I probably had that for the first 5 years of this organization. This is my baby. I want everything to go this way. I've learned very quickly, that's not going to be sustainable and it's not healthy for the organization.
Thank you so much. That's your
That's
transparency.
great. And I'm pretty much on the same bus as you, but I would say, as a leader, it is your job to set the example, you set the tone, and you set the pace. But if the team cannot buy into that and keep up with that, then you're not only failing them and yourself, but you're failing the organization and the mission. So as soon as it becomes about me and my pace or what I'm doing or what I can do for the organization, I'm missing the mark and I'm doing a big disservice to my team and the survivors that we're blessed to serve. So one of the ways I try to check myself on that is to build a team that, could far outlive me, outperform me, that is way more educated than me, that their experience in life and in the classroom and everywhere else is greater than mine. And you're supposed to surround yourself with greater minds than yours. I mean, iron sharpens iron, right? So I try to put people in the right seat on the bus being House of Cherith, but maybe I'm the driver, but maybe some days I'm on the back seat hanging out with other people, right? So to be able to shift and allow other people to thrive in their role, I do not want to be a clinician. I definitely don't want to be a case manager. And if I'm a resident house mom, the house is going to have a party every day, so not much will get accomplished. So to ensure that I have the right people in the right spot on the bus and then allow them to just take the reins. Obviously, there's some checks and balances there. Obviously, there's goals they have to meet. There's accountability and structure, but to ensure that everyone's on the right seat on the bus and then to develop a team to where if I'm out for whatever reason, the program can still thrive. I think that's any leader's ultimate goal is that the program will outlive them, that the team could thrive without them. I mean, one of the things that helped me check this early on is I had a baby and I was in the hospital in the NICU for a couple of weeks and I didn't have the emotional capacity or time or anything to, pour as much into the organization. But guess what? They thrived, they succeeded, they even grew during that time. We had more intakes, we had all kinds of success stories. Why? Because the team helped make that possible. I couldn't do it by myself. If it was about the Kelsey show, we would still just have one house with 10 residents, but now we have 9 houses and over 100 residents, right? So it's not about me or, frankly, the team, it's about the ladies. But as a leader, you can fall into founder syndrome easily when you see that success happening, when you see the homes growing, the team growing, the residents succeeding. But at the end of the day, I think about what my legacy should be for my girls, it's that I loved and served others well. It's not that I built a billion-dollar organization. It's not that I have homes all over the states and internationally. It's that I loved and served other people well. And that's what I hope my daughters will see in me. So that's what helps check my founder syndrome.
I love that. Thank you so much. One thing that we say on our team, or my supervisor always says, is like we have a team where we're walking with giants, right? Like everybody's seat on the bus is equally as important, and we equip and empower everybody to be a giant in their seat in that bus, right? So I thank you guys for that. Okay, Rosie, you're going to be in the hot seat now as our resident non-founder executive director. Love your thoughts on that, and also like how to stepping into leadership without the founder status and stepping into an organization that had people in that position before you shape your approach.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, I have nothing to add to that. I was going to let the experts and the founders speak on that. But no, I think that it requires humility and clarity. And I also think it means honoring the history, but not idolizing the history. I think we can get so caught up on what was and what has always been true that it is difficult to move past it and that we don't have a vision for the future when that takes place. And so I think my role is to look at what's already been done and then consider how I can help move the mission forward. Obviously, not as a founder, but as someone who is able to come in and say, these are some blind spots. And I think that is one of the benefits of not being the founder or in stepping into something that is already established is you come in with new eyes and perspective that maybe no one else saw because they've been in it for 15 years and it's always been done this way and said this way. And so for me, I think it means coming in, honoring the history, but saying, okay, while that person was great, no organization, like we have to be stronger than just one personality. If that person moves on, we have to have the capacity to move forward. And so how do I do that? And I think for me, it means what are the blind spots? What are the barriers? And what are the things that impede quality care? And then how do I build on that in a way that is healthy and sustainable for those around me?
That's great. Thank you so much. I'm so glad we have the two perspectives today because there's so many leaders on this call, and there are many founders on this call. I see you, and there are many people who stepped into organizations or are operating, and so I'm glad that they have that resource from both of you. I want to ask, Nick, and that would be, you've all talked about looking at all those and feedback loops and all of that, but how do you identify areas that you need to grow as a leader, and how do you seek that feedback? Who wants to start?
Well, I'll just mention again that we do a manager 360 survey. And by the way, I'm happy to share that with anybody. We use a format that was used for managers from all disciplines to evaluate their style and their abilities. It's something like 30 points that people have been evaluating their manager against anonymously. Works perfectly unless you have a team of one, because then you know who rated you. But anyway, and it's very humbling to get the feedback and see some of the perceptions that people have. And one of the things, just again, in the spirit of transparency, because of my background, and I heard Kelsey say this, the pace that I can keep. I've heard, I've received the feedback, you're too fast, you're too far ahead, you're over here, you think you told me that we're going, but you didn't really tell me. And I've also heard that from my husband. So I know, and my kids. So I know that there was truth to it. So I had to work on, hey, slow down, get feedback, get input on what you're doing. And a lot of the time you end up in the same place, but you're bringing the whole team along with you. And that is where the power is. And so implementing that, some kind of feedback loop, I think intentionally, is really, really important, on this journey.
Thank you
Yeah,
so much,
100% agree with that. My board actually just put me through a 360 review where the board, some of the key staff, some of the residential staff, a lot of stakeholders did a review of me. And I was like, this is going to be so fun. I love surveys and checking boxes. And I saw it, I was like, oh, this is just not fun. But it was essential to highlight some areas where I needed to grow and serve the team better. Like you, my biggest area is slow down. And I'm like, but that's no fun. We have so much to do. There's so many ladies that need us. They said, well, Kelsey, you got to take the team with you, and they can't keep up with your pace and your crazy energy. And I said, okay, fine. So I tried to slow down. I'm still working on it, work in progress. But one of the biggest thing is not only asking for advice and feedback, not only implementing the surveys, but then to take action and tell your team the areas that you're going to improve on. So after my review, the people that did conduct a survey for me, I sent them an email. I said, hey, this is an area that you collectively as a team highlighted that I need to work on. Here's my 3 steps on how I'm going to work on that in the next 3, 6, 9 months. If you don't see that, please come talk to me and let's work on it together. So that's been fun. I do have a leadership coach, and that has been very challenging. He calls me out on a lot of things, and I need that. We all need that checks and balances. We all need to be held accountable, and we all need to highlight some of our blind spots every now and then. So my advice for myself would just be to slow down, to listen, and then once I hear it, to act on it.
Thank you so
I
much,
think
Kelsey.
I'm gonna pass. I don't know that there's any areas that I need growth there. No, I think a telltale sign of an area of lack is our knee-jerk responses to something. So when something happens and it throws us off guard, what naturally comes out, like what spews out of our heart. And I think for me, that is always indicative of something more that's happening, and that's something that needs exploration. And then I have to ask myself, how did the way that I show up today impact other people? And this is starting to feel like a theme, because I think for me, it is, I have to slow down. I had one of my staff who was also a survivor who left our team because she had some other things to pursue that was just good for her. I saw her at church a few weeks ago, and I went to give her a hug, and something was off. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to pry unless she invites me into that. And so she said, can I ask you a question? And I was like, yeah, what's up? And she said, the last time I saw you, I felt as if I didn't matter. And I can't remember her verbiage exactly, but it was something to the extent of, I didn't give her the proper time that she deserved. And so I was taken aback, because I was like, wait a minute, I love you. Like, and my initial response was for the inner lawyer to defend that, like, wait a minute, no, I love you and I think this about you. But then I had to consider how she felt. And if that is the way that you felt, my intention doesn't really matter all that much. And so for me, it meant taking a step back and saying, I apologize. It was not my intention to show up that way. I don't know. I can't remember what was happening that day, but it was to say, hey, I'm sorry and I love you. And you have always been dear to me and you are dear to me. And so I think it means for me being honest that sometimes my intentions do not compute the way that I would like for them to. And a lot of that is because either I am always going or my brain is always going. And so sometimes it just means slowing down, but I think it also means what naturally spews out of you when something happens, because that could be indicative of a leadership lack.
Thank you so much, Rosie. I have noticed a lot of comments about just everyone's transparency, so I thank you panelists for your transparency as well, because that is also a mark of great leadership, and it's the way that we grow and the way that we encourage the rest of the leaders in this space. But I'm going to shift into our Q&A. We have some really great questions in the Q&A. I'm also seeing a big shout out to coaching in the chat. I also have a coach. Couldn't end leadership coaching more than, yeah, it's incredible. But the first question we have is, how do you recommend leaders balance immediate crisis needs and building long-term systems of safety and healing and sustainability? Does anybody feel like they want to answer that question or start us off?
Sure, I'll take it. My coach and I just developed this fun pattern that works for me. It may not work for you, but it's a 60, 20, and 20. So you're giving, no, 60, 30, 10, sorry. So you're giving 60% of your attention to the day-to-day, the emergency crises, all of that. You're giving 20% to those middle areas. I can't get my numbers wrong. 30% and then 10. It's got to equal 100. It's 60, 30, and 10. And then the 10% is for that big vision casting where you see a gap in programming, where you're adding a new house or a new program and you spend a lot of time there. Obviously, it's not going to translate the same exact equation every single day, but to try and prioritize what is needed in that day from you, and then developing a space in your schedule where it's about vision casting, because you don't want your organization to just be stagnant and stay where it is. You always want to be growing. That doesn't always mean adding a new home. That could be, just revamping or pouring back into your team. But I spend about 60% on the day-to-day, about 30% on those bigger picture items, and then hopefully 10% on something new or creative or something that will make me a better leader. So whether that's me participating in another training or reading some articles or listening to podcasts, it's pouring back into me so I can pour back into my team. So that's kind of what I do to help balance it. In this line of work, there's always going to be a crisis. There's always going to be an emergency. And to ensure that your team is equipped and trained to handle a vast majority of those, that's a huge thing as well. So there are quite a few people on this campus that if they can't reach me, they can start calling all these other people. A lot of emergencies now, they don't even call me directly. They call, our program managers or our case managers, or unfortunately sometimes security. So it just depends on the nature of the crisis, but to, again, train and equip your teams to handle those, but to try to think of things that are your boxes. What are things that only Kelsey can do for the organization? Focus on some of those. What are things that I can do, but so can this person, and helping delegate some there as well. So that's me.
Thank you so much, Kelsey. Vanessa, I saw you unmute. Do you have more to add to that?
Yeah. And so it is a little challenging for me. So I have 4 different kind of major programs that are under the Love Never Failed umbrella. So housing is one of them. Our IT Biz Tech Academy is another one. We have a search and recovery department and mobile case management department, and we have an education department. So we have these 4 departments, and the way that we've structured it is that we have a program design for each one of those departments that operates under a theory of change. And there are outcomes, expected outcomes, there's procedures, there's policies, there's SOPs, a bunch of sort of infrastructure that has been established to make those programs run effectively. And my approach is to make sure that the procedures are collaboratively created and evaluated on a regular basis, but that they run themselves. They it's a framework, it's a structure that runs with staffing that doesn't include me. And so I am sort of dipping in and out and kind of offering support and care to the staff, doing skip levels, meeting with the clients, again, doing street outreach from time to time, coming to the houses from time to time, teaching some of the IT Biz Tech Academy classes. So dipping in and out as a way to kind of get a pulse on what's going on, but respecting the frameworks and the leadership that has been established for each program. And that for me has been working. And part of the reason for that is that my main role is to care for the fundraising of the organization and the policy, the overarching policy of the organization, and also to be outward looking in terms of advocacy. So you might find me at the state capitol, you might find me in Washington, and I'm trying to influence those spaces so that we have a macro sort of strategic change around human trafficking while these internal initiatives are running very successfully under very equipped and capable leadership. And it's been flowing pretty well, although, again, it's the big thing is not going too fast. So, I have these visions, but they only work as long as the staff feels that they're a part of the work, they're part of the decision making, and they're part of the forward movement of the organization.
Thank you so much. Rosie, do you want to add to that?
Nope, they got it.
We'll move right on. So this next question is about work-life balance. Have any of you struggled with work-life balance? Yeah,
what time it is?
how did you navigate it? The attendee said that they tend to work and respond whenever the need arises, but other team members have preferred clearer lines to protect their personal time, and this at times has causes challenges. What's your advice there?
I think that, yes, I feel like work-life balance for any professional who has a home life. Like, I don't even know if I've ever found the balance. I think it's somewhere out there. I don't know that I've ever done it healthily. But I think I try to remember that every day my team walks into our homes, they are also navigating things that I don't see. They have families in crisis situations at home that I don't know about. And so in this work is so necessary to show up as whole people because of what we do, but it's that we also have to sit in the tension that there is life outside of our programs. And if I care about that person, that means caring about them not when they're on the clock at refuge, but also about their well-being. And so I am one of those people where if I get a call at 2 a.m. and it comes through twice, I probably will answer. I have other team members who will not. But I think a lot of that is being clear about what someone's yes is, and it's giving people the opportunity to speak into what they have capacity for versus me calling you to something that is unfair and doesn't consider your family and life outside of here. And so if you're one of those people where at 5 o'clock, I'm going on do not disturb until the next business day. Now, some positions do not have that luxury, I think, depending on what your role is. But I think by and large, it means being curious and asking people, what are your boundaries? What does this look like for you? Are you someone who wants to be called, or would you prefer having email that overviews this in your inbox at the top of the morning? And so, but I think for me, I do want to be available to my team. And so just the other night, I got a few calls and text messages and police were on site. And so that's something I want to know about in real time to respond accordingly. But I think there's wisdom in knowing what those of us around us have the capacity for and being okay with that.
Thank you. Kelsey or Vanessa, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I don't have a great balance, so I shouldn't be the one to coach you here. I love my job so much. I love it a little too much. I take it home with me. My husband hears about it. I do emails after bedtime for the girls. So I love it. It's sustainable for me. It's not for everyone. And to know, each person's role, their preferences, their boundaries, and then trying to honor those. If I'm working in the evening and if I don't say respond right now, I don't expect a response, but that's when I'm able to get to it. So just trying to make sure that I honor other people's boundaries, and then obviously, trying to decrease my work when I go home. Doesn't always happen. Some days it does. One thing I do in the afternoons before going home, I go to the gym so I can turn off my work hat a little bit there and I turn on my mom hat, and it's like I'm able to be fully present, processing some of the trauma. On a boxing bag is great, on a treadmill is great. So for me, it's the gym that helps kind of maintain my balance. It's in the middle of my scale. For other people, it may be something different, but just trying to find what works for you, and every position is different. Everybody carries a different piece of the organization. So some require you to respond quickly and some you can wait till tomorrow, but trying to learn kind of your role and expectations there. And if you don't know that from your boss, then you should ask. And if they don't give you clear roles, responsibilities, expectations, then you should probably chat with them. And if my team's on here and you need that, come on over. We'll chat after the seminar.
And if
Yeah.
I could just really quickly just jump in and say there's 4 things. I'm walking 3 times a week while I'm doing a one-on-one, and it's a mile walk during a 30-minute one-on-one. So that's been really effective. I take my Sabbaths on Fridays because I'm usually speaking somewhere on both Sunday and Saturday. I do work about 12 hours a day, so full disclosure, but I don't fool around with like my kids' dinner time, and we have time every day to check in. That's super important. So just the self-care, the timeouts, but then, I think like Rosie and Kelsey said, I'm here for it. I might get calls in the middle of the night during emergencies. I think that's important, but for the most part, it's setting some time frames for timeouts. So
Yeah, and thank you all so much. We are at time, so I want to respect everyone's time for their own balance and things that they're doing. But I thank you all panelists for your willingness to come on and be so transparent about where you're getting it right and where you're getting it wrong. I think the work-life balance in your transparency there, even just helping everyone feel seen, that this is not something that any of us are doing well, and something that I think shifts daily, right? Like, and we have our non-negotiable times and our negotiable times. Well, I'll show up for this, but not for this, and this time I won't show up for anything. And for our attendees for showing up and being present and wanting to invest in themselves, because that's a huge part of leadership in this field as well, is equipping ourselves to be able to feed back into our teams. And just grateful for everyone that's here on the call today and for coming up and showing up as you are and taking time out to do this. So I appreciate you all. If I'll be sending out an email, if you have more leadership specific questions, you can send them over. I can try and get answers for you. And just know on this topic, shameless plug, our conference in March is specifically for leaders in the field. It is our intention to try and fill that leadership gap in the field and equip leaders with the information and tools that they need to do better in their teams, and not just for the practical day-to-day. We're trying to have a good balance of both. But if you are a leader in this field who's looking to connect with other leaders, we do have that conference in March as well. But I just appreciate you all taking time to be a part of this webinar. Bye-bye.